All right, as we said, welcome everyone to our discussion today, hosted by Darlene Doriyama and Nadine Richards. The title is Diversity, Challenges, and Opportunities. We're going to launch right on in. As we said, the session today will be recorded. When we hop into the chat section, it will not be recorded, just FYI. We're glad that our partners from TIE Online are joining us today. We'll do quick introductions and then jump right into the conversation. If you're just joining, just chiming in, you can type in the chat where in the world you're joining us from. We always like to do a quick check-in, quick self-check to let you know that well-being matters. Some of you may have been sitting for most of the day. Some of you may have just got up, woke up. No matter where you're at in the world, just take a couple minutes just to check in with yourselves, whether it's a drop your shoulders, taking a deep breath in or out. If you've been sitting most of the day, you might want to take this moment and stand up, do a quick stretch those arms out, or it might be just a short rubbing of the palms back and forth. So just take about 10 seconds and just check in with your body and just your mind and do what you need to do. So we'll do a quick self-check. All right. So again, we've been hosting a series of webinars and discussions throughout the summer with our partners at the International Educator. I'm going to turn over to Brittany and Meadow. I think they're online just to give a quick introduction and share some opportunities to get involved with TIE Online.
I just wanted to welcome Brittany Betts from TIE. And as always, Kevin, it's such a pleasure and an honor to be able to co-host these with you. Welcome everybody to today's dialogue. And I think at the end of our session, our editor Meadow will have some words to say about how we can get you involved and you can be a part of the TIE platform to help share your voice. But for today, I just want to say thank you so much to Nadine for being here and for allowing us to be a part of this conversation. Thank you so much.
Definitely. Thank you, Brittany. And just a little quick blurb about AIELOC, as opposed, a lot of people say, oh, it's a long name, Association of International Educators and Leaders of Color. AIELOC is the short version. We're devoted to amplifying the work of international educators and leaders of color around the world. And we primarily focus on advocacy, learning, and research. I know some folks are still trying to get in. Don't worry, I see you, letting you all in. Our flow for today, we're going to turn over to our moderator. She'll introduce herself, Darlene Doriyama, and then she'll introduce Nadine Richards. And then we will have some time for breakout sessions. And our big thing is always coming back to what are our next steps? What are our commitments to act? Whether we're at a school as a leader, we're part of an organization, we're part of a team, or we're a teacher in the classroom or leading an organization. What are your next step commitments? What are you going to now share back, bring back? Resources and things of that nature. So again, we're grateful, and we have a Padlet that's set up. Nadine has one set up. We have one in collaboration with TIE Online AIELOC, where you'll be able to share your ideas as well. So I'm gonna turn over to Darlene and Nadine as we transition from one slide to the next. Now hop on mute. Go ahead, Darlene.
Thank you, Kevin. Hi, everyone. My name is Nadine Richards, and I'm originally from Burundi in Eastern Africa, and I work as an educator, a teacher at the International School of Luxembourg. And I'm thrilled and honored to sit here with all of you and with the amazing Nadine Richards and have a candid, authentic, and heartfelt conversation on the challenges and opportunities around diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. I would like to start obviously to say enormous thank you to all of you who are here, and a big thank you to Nadine for leading this conversation. And I must say that I'm very impressed with her. I met her the first time yesterday, and we had a great chat and had an instant, connection, which was very good for this chat, I believe. And so I'd like to share a little bit with you what I know about her and introduce her. So Nadine was born in Jamaica and raised in Brooklyn, New York. She has worked in the public and international school system for over 20 years. She has served as an advocate for special needs children. Sorry? Oh, Yeah, okay. She's a teacher, dean of students, associate principal, and CEO. She also has her own consultancy, Nadine Inspires, which is an education solutions startup consultancy and an ongoing project for changing and improving the landscape of education for the betterment of all children across the globe. So as much as her experiences are impressive, what I personally was impressed with the most is her commitment and passion to have a lasting impact on young people and her school community. So before becoming an educator, Nadine worked in the criminal justice field. And this is really what I love the most. Witnessing firsthand how the inequities and injustice adversely impacted brown and Black young people, she transitioned into education so she could help young people avoid the prison pipeline. And that's how she got into education. So, and then later on, the need to implement and draft policies that impact teachers and students is what brought her to become an admin. So that's why I am very, very excited to sit here with her and to discuss ways educators and school leaders can individually and collectively move forward to become authentic with diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. So Nadine, welcome and thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you, Darlene. I'm like blushing. I hope it doesn't show. That was such a sweet introduction, a warm introduction, and thank you. I really appreciate having you as a partner in this. And I'm really honored and thrilled, Kevin, for this platform.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you so
Kevin,
much.
thank you so much for all the work you've been doing. Sorry, Nadine.
Mm-hmm.
But I also want to say that I have a feeling that this is that kind of a webinar that where we're going to lean into discomfort and when we're not going to be comfortable at all, right? And that's okay. So without further ado, let's dig in and start.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that, Darlene, because today we are going to just be open, candid. We're going to explore diversity in depth and beyond the surface. We're going to go underneath. We're going to go deep. We need to understand the history and the challenges, but also be hopeful and recognize that there are opportunities for us to grow. And just realizing that this is not going to be fixed by this session or discussion, that this is an ongoing long process. What we are not going to do is just tick a box. I'd like us to challenge ourselves to move beyond the statements that maybe our schools have posted or, the appropriate political response, and just really take this time to be honest and self-aware and engage with one another. Next slide. So some of the norms and understandings that I want us to commit to, because we're going to be posing those hard questions. We're going to be asking you, how committed are you to diversity, equity, and inclusivity? Or are you just remaining on trend? So you're going to have to lean into that discomfort. We're asking you to look individually and collective as your school. You need to be self-aware, acknowledge, and recognize that we're all accountable for this. I'm going to challenge you to think differently. And those of you that have worked with me know that is one of my big things. And then one of the things we're going to need to do, and sometimes this is hard for us as educators, is we're going to need to unlearn to be able to keep moving forward and continue our lifelong learning in this realm. And then I want us to make sure that we act consciously and conscientiously. And next slide, we're going to get into a Malcolm quote that's a little controversial to many people. And the reason I like this quote is because I think you can really feel it. And I know you can read it, but if someone sticks a knife 9 inches and pulls it out 6, there's no progress. If you pull it all the way out, there is still no progress. But for me, this is the key in what Malcolm is saying, that the progress is healing the wound that the blow made. And that's what we are looking to do as educators. We want to move forward. More importantly, we want to be able to heal. And to do that, we're going to have to be courageous. And we're going to have to recognize and get out of the comfort of the lies upon which America was built. America was built on the ideals that we are all proud of and we're all want to achieve, but we haven't achieved them yet. And I think it's important to make that acknowledgement. We need to be courageous to teach and to live up to those ideals upon which our country was built. Education, like probably not even as much as other things, is a reflection of our society. It always has been. And so when we look to change and grow, learning institutions, schools, associations needs to be the ones to lead that reform. It is really our duty, it is our purpose, it is our calling to do so. And it has to begin with us. And again, I'm going to push you to surrender to the lies that we have. We need to recognize that we have privileges. Some of us have privileges that while we did not we're not necessarily the architects of this systemic racism, we are the beneficiaries, many of us, of it. And our ancestors were the architects. And the history is not past. You know, often in school, history is taught as it's the past, but this history is still our present. And it's something that we're going to have to dig deep in. So you're gonna need to be ready to let go of your privilege, your circumstances, the lies upon which many of us grew up on, the understanding that your color of your skin does not make you better than someone who is my brown shade or dark shade. These are the discomforts that I'm going to challenge you to really dig into today and challenge yourself. So again, think of history as not the past, but the present, so we can begin again and move forward. You know, W.E.B. Du Bois, he always talked about the propaganda of history, and Martin Luther King Jr. also talked about the manipulation of history. I think this is a time that's calling us to face it. There is a health pandemic, there is a racial unrest, and we really need to let go of falsehoods that we believe or that we grew up on, and really try to do right for the sake of our students. And specifically today, I'm focusing on Black and Brown young people. So let's heal. Let's move to the next slide. It's a cartoon.
Nadine, can I bounce back to what you were saying?
Sure.
The quote, because when I was listening to you, I just thought about, I like the words that you're using, the lies. And it's something that I've been debating with some people in the international community. What are the lies that are going on in the international schools? I mean, how international are we really, right? So what do you think about that? I feel like we are not very transparent. I think that, and I'm not talking about all international schools, but as a whole, yes, we are international. Yes, we praise the global citizenship, but it's on paper.
Absolutely.
And how real is it? So what do you think about that?
So I think the populations we serve are international, but the mindset is not yet there. And the population of teachers and leaders and board members are not international. Back in 2000, the superintendency, or head of school, not just in the US, but around the world, was deemed the most white male-dominated profession. And most educators are female, but yet the leadership does not reflect that. And I'm gonna go into that a little bit later too, but I think it's important that we recognize that we are not there, especially in international schools. So we have a population we're serving that feels they're not represented. And the curriculum is not culturally responsive because we are still hiding behind some falsehoods and we're not moving ahead to address it. And again, the communities, for example, if you are doing a search for a head and you are advertising that it should be, you should have prior headship or superintendency experience and this is what you're looking for your school. That description in of itself supports systemic racism because the field of superintendencies and heads has systematically been white males. So if you are looking for someone currently in that role, you're pretty much advertising that you are looking for a white male. And so I want us to think and challenge ourselves to think more about the emotional intelligence, the dispositions, the skills that we are looking for in a head, for example, when we are doing searches. Likewise with the teachers. I remember a time when people wouldn't look at you if you didn't come from a certain school. And that's not equitable. That's not dealing with diversity, because while you could have gotten into that school, there are circumstances in everyone's life that may have prevented them from attending that school. And so we really need to, when we are hiring, look at what are some of the habits of mind that we have that might be influencing our decisions and might be actually supporting racism. And I think with our students, and we'll talk about that a little bit, and I'd like you to dig into that when we do the Padlet, you know, are our students seeing themselves in the curriculum? Or are they just reminded that they were useless slaves? I mean, we need to talk about that. We need to talk about how, you know, what are the books that we are including in our curriculum? You know, how are we connecting things for students? How are we making students see themselves? And then we need to be mindful of what are some of our identities, privileges that we might be bringing to the classroom, because some of that is unconsciously. But you need to first look at that. And that self-awareness, that self-identity, it's so important.
I agree, completely agree.
So I know many, go ahead, Darlene.
Go ahead. No, please, go ahead.
This cartoon is from Peanuts. I don't know if all is familiar. And the reason that I'm sharing this cartoon is because when you look at it, you see diversity. The people sitting around the table are a diverse group. There's male, there's female, there's even a dog. There's a Franklin who is a person of color, and equity. If you look, everyone has access to the food on the table, so there is definitely equity. There is some inclusion because everyone is at this same table. And so one of the reasons I like this cartoon is because even looking at this, you have to feel that something doesn't feel right. Something's still wrong, even when we can look at it and say there's diversity, equity, and inclusion. And what I think is missing here that we don't tap into and really reinforce in international schools is a sense of belonging. Belonging is missing. You could tap, Kevin. There's a sense of belonging here, and belonging is very, 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 very important. And you know, we'll talk about that. You can go to the next slide, Kevin. You can have diversity, you can have inclusion, you can have equity. But if our culture and our institutions fail to create a sense of belonging, all of that is honestly lost. Diversity, yes, is inviting different people to the table. But if they don't feel like they can share their ideas and be themselves, then you're really not embracing diversity. You're just putting on a show because that face is there like a puppet, but their voice, their experience, who they are as a person is absent. And some,
I'm so,
go ahead, Darlene.
I mean, I'm so glad you brought this, belonging point, because it's so important. I've seen recently that many schools are discussing about hiring process. Where do we go to find diversity, people of color, people, indigenous people, et cetera, et cetera. And there are talks of some heads of schools saying, maybe we should go to Africa and do, a search over there, which is good. But here's my problem, and I want you to think about that. You could get the best teachers somewhere in Africa who are qualified, best qualified, etc. And then you bring them in a system that is so new for them. The parents, the culture is completely new. And my problem is that I'm afraid that if they don't have the training, the cultural training that they need, that it might not even be good for them. And I'm not talking about everybody. I'm not talking about how qualified they are. I'm talking about, checking that box of diversity. Okay, here we are, we have them, it's all diversity, and then go on and do the job. And there is this lack, right? So
and Darlene, they have to also be able to address the culture, because the culture needs training, not just that person coming in. The culture needs training how to accept and deal with new people. That's where sometimes there creates this artificial harmony that many people talk about, where, no one says anything, everyone just pretends that everything is good and happy. And, I'll tell you, those teams never really work. They don't accomplish anything because they're not exchanging diverse ideas. There's not that healthy conflict. And again, it's not just about the diverse face, but it's taking in that diverse idea and experiences. And I will tell you, if you start to see that your institution is able to bring in diverse people, but you cannot retain them, I'm going to tell you, without even looking at the data, it's because you have not created a sense of belonging. And they don't feel included, and they don't feel like they can be themselves.
Yeah. I'm looking at the chat here from Abena Baden, who wrote, "It seems assimilation is what most schools want rather than integration." And I
absolutely. In fact, Kevin, you go to the next slide? Yes, because belonging is it is an integration, but part of that, it's not an assimilation. And I think it's really important for us to recognize that. The little picture on there from Molly West Duffy and Liz Fosslin, I really like it because it speaks to what I think many of us, and I can share for myself as a Black woman in education and in leadership. You are supposed to be one person at work, and the very traits and skills that make you awesome, you really can't share at work. And so that magic is lost. And what I think I'm trying to point out here is that if you really want that magic and you want your institution to grow and you want diversity to really work, that sense of belonging needs to be there. I need to feel safe. Your diverse population needs to feel safe. But even as important, they need to feel valued. If I know that every time I open my mouth, you don't want to hear a word that comes out of it, or why would I stay? I think, and I'll go into that a little bit when we talk about the role of leader. I think that is the challenge many of us face, that, we're welcomed into the community, but we're not embraced for our differences. It's like you are welcome to come to the table. We are very collaborative, so long as you agree with us. Yes. So long as your ideas are the traditional same ideas. So then why bring in diversity if you want the same, yeah. Next slide. I love this quote, this diversity statement, a DEI statement from Johnson & Johnson, Wanda Bryant Hope, because I think it captures the whole idea. While they're talking about their vision for inclusion and diversity, it speaks to exactly what you need to retain that. And it's about being yourself. If you can't bring yourself into the workplace, if you can't be a part of that group, sharing the confidence, the alliance, the security of that group, you're not going to contribute, and that team is not going to be an effective team. It's actually going to be a dysfunctional team. That they talk about that even in other books. They don't label it as diversity, but if you read even the 5 dysfunctions of a team, that fear of conflict, that artificial harmony, that's what prevents growth. You need your leadership team, you need your teachers, you need your students to feel that they have a voice. And not just that you allow them to speak, but you hear them, you are listening, you are taking their feedback and input, and you value it. I will say, I think that has been what worked for me as a leader, no matter what institution I've gone to, because the students, the parents, the teachers understand that I really value what they say, how they feel. We're often told to keep emotions out of the workplace, but I think that it's just not even realistic. How you feel matters. That's why we want our leaders to be empathetic. How you feel matters. And if you don't feel safe or valued, that's a dangerous place to be and stay.
Nadine, I have an important question for you here. And I love this quote. I have a problem with be yourself. I would love to be completely myself, but as a Black woman, it can be hard to be completely yourself. I remember, I mean, it's gone much better now because I feel like I know my truth. But you know, when I get passionate and I'm starting arguing, and you know, there is this French / Burundian accent, African accent that kicks in, you know, and then there are two responses that I always get. It's people are very surprised because you switch from one accent to another one, and I can see that I'm being portrayed as being a little bit aggressive. And coming from where we come, we talk with hands, and we are very, you know, we speak with our body, and then I don't want to be portrayed as the Black angry woman, you know, or I get responses such as, what is that? What you mean this? So they are correcting my accent and my, you know, how I talk. So you go as far as denying a very important part of your identity.
Absolutely. To
be accepted in a system that is not working for you, right? Actually, that works against you. So yes, be yourself is good, but how do we create spaces where leaders and teachers can really be fully themselves with their own differences and their beautifully inherited accent without feeling like they are excluded and without denying their identity anymore to be accepted? I think I don't know how to do it. I mean, I don't know how.
I think that's one of the reasons we're on this chat, because it is a challenge. And I remember when I started out as an administrator back in 2006, you know, one of my things, particularly as I'm short, petite, I wanted to always present myself as tall. And, you know, again, Jamaican background. So if I'm nervous or I am passionate about something or what, you definitely hear a little bit of an accent of some sort. And so, you know, I was always like very mindful of that. And I just realized that for me personally, I have to be me. And I mean, to be honest, from childhood, I've been an outspoken person. My mom could tell you so many stories. You know, it's just who I am. It's what led me even to the careers that I've had. And so, you know, I think one of the things that has to happen is we need leadership in place that's courageous. You know, this is just not a time for a coward. You're gonna have to, you know, stand up for yourself and your team, your students. And I will tell you, one of the things students have always said to me is they admire that I speak out. They feel that they get a voice and they feel empowered. That's how everyone, a leader needs to make everyone in their community feel. This is why I stress that emotion and belonging is important. And I will tell you, as a courageous leader, it's not always going to work out in your favor because of the given climate, and things are still progressing and need to change. Sometimes when you speak out and you advocate for others, then the turn of attack, and sometimes it's even personal, comes to you. And I will be honest, I've had circumstances where I've retreated and regretted it. And then I had circumstances where I said, you know what, I need to continue on this path, whether it results in me not staying with this company or institution. Because at the end of the day, I need to be me. And if you're hiring and you wanted that level of expertise, and I see a wrong, and that's any wrong. That could be child abuse, child protection issues, racism against a teacher, making someone feel unsafe, and a leader doing it. If I'm part of your leadership team, I think it's my responsibility to let you know that that's happening. I've actually had a superintendent, I'll say an associate or a superintendent say to me, you know, I wasn't, you know, I don't want you to think I was being dodgy, but, you know, it was kind of my job to push you out. I was shocked that someone would even say something like that. And I just think as educators, even when a teacher is not working out, your job is not to push them out. If a student isn't doing well, your job is not to push them out. If you have a flower in the garden and it's not growing, it's not that you go and change the flower. You look at the environment. What's wrong with the soil? Do I need to add more water? Do I need to put it in sun? So we need to reframe the way we think sometimes when it comes to our students, to our teachers, and make sure we are doing what they need. This is where that belonging comes in. And I think what happens is many people, when institutions are able to hire diverse people, but are you able to get them to stay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think it's a very important point where, you know, our colleagues, especially our white colleagues or school leaders, should be aware of the reality of people of color, especially when you go into leadership, that again, we go back to diversity. Okay, I've hired you, good, I've checked the box, but there is struggle and challenges that comes with us. And whenever we try to be ourselves, it's so difficult. And many of us have lost jobs because we were ourselves, right? And we didn't want to deny any parts of our identity. So I'm very glad you talked about that.
Yeah, and just one more thing I want to mention regarding the belonging. You know, it's not a one-time thing. So it happens from you hire. I'll tell you, even when I'm vetting schools to see if I see that sense of belonging in the current community and how they want to rope me in and vet me. It's that onboarding process. It's after the onboarding process. How are they included? Are you celebrating your staff? Are you recognizing their strengths and their successes? Are you having sunshine or care committees? I mean, little basic things that you can do just to make people be involved. When you have different task force, when you have different initiatives that you want to put forward, are you inviting their voices? And then when you invite their voices, are you really listening? You know, or is it that someone at the top has a plan already and you're telling people, okay, we want to hear from you, but we're not really going to do anything you say? People recognize that quite quickly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think it would be great as well for, you know, colleagues to also be brave enough to speak up when things like that happen and be like, no, you know, this is how she sees things, and she doesn't have to see things the way we see things, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think if we have more allies, you know, that
Mm-hmm.
can be courageous enough and say, you know, speak up, I think we're heading in the right direction, definitely.
Yeah, and I think in the international community, you know, and we have so many different associations also that we belong to. I think it would be great when you're bringing in diverse peoples to create a network, or especially diverse leaders, or as you reshape what you might be looking for in a head, are you connecting them to a sponsor or mentor? Why are we not doing those things? That's quite important. That's part of that belonging, someone they could connect to. We try to make sure we do it in schools with advisories. As adults, we need them too. You know, there's just little things that we can do. And I think if we brainstorm, we can share ideas. What is working with your students with special needs? You're not doing the same thing for every one of them, but what are the different things you're doing? How might that be applicable to our community?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yay. It's great.
Next slide, Kev.
And the chats are excellent. I mean,
They are. When we transition over to the video in a few, I'll turn over to you, Darlene, to look into the chat.
Yeah, there are so many things that I can talk about. There is one that I just saw from Jennifer. The real issue with private international schools or predominantly white institutions is that we are not allowed to disrupt without consequence. Many of these institutions value the white supremacist views of the families over those of BIPOC, and we need our white allies to be the ones doing this difficult work.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely.
Yes. I mean, we're going to talk about that actually.
We're actually going to talk about that, because I was going to play a video just to speak specifically to that. I love having these conversations, but these conversations necessarily don't need to be led by a person of color. In fact, quite the opposite. You know, what are our white colleagues doing to get together to have these conversations? How are you making sure that the team that you're working with, you are inviting them and letting them feel like they belong, that you are hearing their diverse ideas and experiences? If you want something to be homogeneous and all the same, then you should just hire the same. There's no need for pretense. But if you're looking to grow and have students experience themselves in your learning community, then you have to let go, and you have to first acknowledge the privileges and the white supremacy that's going on right on your campus. I think when people think racist, they think, and sorry for anyone that's down south with me right now in Georgia, but I think they think like Confederate flag and the South. But that subtle bias, that bias that comes from the progressives and the people in the North and the people that are well educated, that is the bias that hurts the most. That's the racism that cuts so deep because you expected different. And, you know, it's not that anyone has to be perfect, but I think we have to call people on it when we see it, because I do think most people's intention is not to be that way.
So I must say that I love this picture, by the way. And it's intriguing, and I wonder what that is. Can you tell us a little bit about it and the dream catchers, you know, concept?
So this is a picture called Dream Catcher from African-American artist Frank Morrison. He's one of my faves. I am not artistically talented, but I love art. And the woman in the picture and the whole idea of dream catcher is how I see a leader's role, how I see my role. A leader is supposed to just be open arms and welcoming and nourish just many dreams and ideas and help people bring that to life. That's what I think a leader is supposed to do. They need to be open and vulnerable. They need to build trust. That catching is an inviting, just come. Your voice is welcome. It's that whole sense of belonging. Dissenting ideas are okay because you don't have to agree with me as a leader. And I think leaders need to recognize and understand that, because it's so important. It's just crucial.
Nadine, I'm curious to know, as a Black woman who has been in different leadership positions, what are the some of the challenges that you've had? What did you learn from it that you could tell other school leaders, actually all races, but especially the ones who are not aware of the reality of you say BIPOC or BIPOC leaders? What would you say?
I would go back to allowing diverse voices and healthy conflict. And I think it's really important as a leader, when you see somebody personally being attacked, that you speak up and do something about it. I think so many times we're afraid for ourselves, we're afraid for that person, and sometimes we speak up, but not enough. And when it doesn't, when it's not addressed, we let it go. And I see this as a safety and a protection thing. So just the same, if you saw a child being abused and you did nothing, you said something and nothing happened, and then it keeps happening, and what would you do? You wouldn't just sit back and watch it continue to happen. I would hope no one would do that. It's the same pain here. It's the same type of abuse, except this one is systemic and stems back generations and is continuous. And I think we need to find that correlation and understand that you can't sit back and allow it to happen. You have to be a part of the change. I mean, you can't go in and change everyone, but what you can do is start with yourself first. You could self-identify with what your privileges are. You can self-identify with how are those privileges impacting who I am as a teacher, who I am as a leader, for good and for possibly bad. Because again, that awareness is a big piece. And then address it. But to just blatantly ignore, I think that's the challenge. And, you know, I'm sorry to say this, but, you know, after George Floyd, I couldn't believe the amount of Black Lives Matter statements that went up, and I wanted to puke. I'm glad it's a time of awareness, but a lot of those statements are so empty. And I really challenge leaders, institutions, teachers, learning communities to live up to those statements, to start doing the work to put those statements into play. That's what I think I'd want to see. It's when we pretend. I saw some statements that were very good, by the way, because they acknowledge the voice of all of their constituents, parents, students, teachers, and leaders. And they acknowledge that they had growth and they had areas to work on. You know, I think that is important, and I think that authenticity is important. And I would welcome going to an institution that is not there yet, but is willing to do that important work to get there. And there's not going to be a Band-Aid fix to this. This has been happening for over 400 years, but we need to take this time and start digging into doing that work. And holding our leaders and communities to do that work. And why are we not bringing on a diverse group in our boards? Why are we not looking to do that? You know, I think we really need to, when we look even on the hiring, what are you doing? If you have all the same type of persons in your hiring committee and you put yourself at risk for continuing that systemic racism. And if you're not establishing habit of minds as to, you know, how you interpret certain things. So if someone decided to do this, they're doing their Zoom video and they're doing it outside on a patio, or you don't like the picture in the background or the bookshelf or whatever in the background, are we making judgments about that? Those things need to be discussed in a committee. People need to be safe to be able to say, what are some of those preconceived notions? We all have them. What are they? So we understand how they impact the hiring.
I completely agree with you, but we starting with ourselves and having this uncomfortable conversation with ourselves. You know, last week I was texting and emailing with some of my students who during this time, summer, are actually are thinking about what do we do to just continue this fight for racial justice. And then as I was talking to them, I realized that the kids are already there. Like these young people are already there. Like they understand, they are brave enough to call on people and say to their friends, mates, dude, this is not okay, right? Saying these kind of languages and language and ideas are not welcome here. There's no place for that. And I think it's partly because they've been raised by and with social media in the midst of Me Too movement and, you know, the Black Lives Matter and LGBTQP. So they are very tolerant. And I feel like we need to catch up. We are the one, you know, who need to catch up and need to show up as much as they are showing up. And I think it's very important that we look into our own biases.
Absolutely.
And at times it's painful because I've had this discussion with many white people, friends, neighbors and colleagues, etc. And it can be painful to look into yourself and ask yourself a simple question such as, why it took me George Floyd to seeing these things happening? Right. You know, how is it possible that I was blind, or I'm surprised about, you know, racial inequality? Right. And why did I always believe there was no systemic racism or structural racism in international schools? Why in 2020? Why did it take another murder for me to see? And these are tough questions. I understand that.
And am I really seeing it, or am I jumping on the trend? Am I looking deep inside to do that? And I think with the piece you were talking about with students and with children, I think they understand how important that belonging is. I mean, no matter what grade level you work with, you know how it feels if that's your child or you've seen a child in school when no one sits at the table with them, or they're being bullied, or it's the same thing. you know, and so I think they understand and can resonate with what it feels like when you are excluded or you are chastised or you know, are made to feel like you are not valued. Because it's the very thing we work on making sure our kids don't feel, but we're not doing it for our adult population. And I will say there are some kids that are feeling, I mean, James Baldwin, I don't remember if it was 63 or 68, but he wrote a piece called Talk to Teacher. If you get a chance, anyone read it, because I think it's still true to today. And he, you know, I think Baldwin is one of those writers that really just, you see him capture the civil rights movement, and you see the hope in his writing and how he, you know, the fire next time and progressiveness. And then when Martin Luther King dies and is assassinated, is killed, and so many others, his writing changes a little bit, because he then starts calling on exactly what I'm saying here. Let's let go of those lies, and calling on white people to lead a movement. Because if you are the architects and the beneficiaries of systemic racism, guess what? It really won't change until you think it's important for it to change, and you are willing to do the work to have it change. Yes, we all want to be part of that work, and we can do that together. But that is an important piece. And I know that doesn't sit nicely with everyone, but it's the truth.
Mm. Yeah.
You could do the next slide, Kev.
All right, well, we transition over to the video. I'm gonna have Darlene jump into that chat, because there's a lot going on in that chat.
Okay, so I see, oh, there are so many great things happening here. From Clara Reynolds, I'm part of ODIS, Organization to Decolonize International School, and we're working to create a network and share student groups who are surveying experiences of racism and other discrimination. It will be great to get in touch with them and add them to our network of 25 plus students group at schools around the world. And I really like this you know, this statement, because I believe in student voice. I believe in them changing, actually driving sort of this whole movement. I have a group of students who have already done it and have, you know, made a webinar where they ask people who have experienced racism to talk about it, and it has shifted a conversation in our schools. You know, they forced everyone in our school community to look at it and face it and do something about it. Whereas people were a little bit like, okay, how do we start? How do we do it? But they were the one who said, you know what, we want to do something and we're going to make it happen. And yes, so I think student voice is extremely important. What else do we have? We have, is there another one? Families in Global Transition did an amazing webinar last night with Donna to talk about the importance of student voices and alumni voices in this conversation. And I think this is very important to the alumni voices. So if we can get people together, I think it could be a great start. Yes, go ahead, Nadine, please.
Well, let's go to the video and then have some time for people to quickly put some, or even after the chat webinar, to be able to do the Padlet and reflect on some of what's been said.
You were, candidly, I've known you for years and covered your career. When we spoke last week, you were hesitant to do this interview. And I'm hoping you can share with people why, because I was so struck by what you said.
Yeah, you know, since this George Floyd and you know, in the pandemic and in the Trump era, the number of calls.
I saw it loading. Give me a second. So you can go back to the chat while I think the video's loading.
Okay, so let's see what we have.
I'll mention in the meanwhile that this is Ursula Burns' voice you're hearing. I don't know if you can get the video to play, Kevin, but she was CEO of Xerox, of a Fortune 500. and she was called on to speak to the George Floyd situation and racial unrest in America.
So there's a great one from Benjamin who wrote, "My school is currently searching for a head with an all-white consultancy firm. That's something a group of us are taking up with HR and leadership." That's great.
Yeah.
That's a really great initiative.
And I would say have them look at that description, because what are you looking for in a head? What are the dispositions that you are looking for? Again, if you are just saying in your description that it's someone who has to have prior head experience, you are continuing this tradition and systemic racism, because that is going to be a white male. If that's what you're looking for, 90% it's going to be a white male. Women of color, women of color in particular do not, I would say it's probably less than 3% that hold superintendencies in America. In the international world, even less. White women, also a marginalized group, but more than women of color. Same with Black males. So again, if our descriptions are saying, or perpetuating the problem, that is a place to start.
Do we have time for one more?
Yep.
One more comment from Joel. In international schools, the soil is already a bag that's been predetermined to have nutrients and conditions for specific kinds of plants, nurtured by gardeners who only know specific kinds of plants. It's a beautiful metaphor.
That is.
Thank you. Let's see here. Yeah. Do we have the video ready? Kevin?
He might be frozen.
Yeah, it's not cooperating, but it's all fine. We'll send it out as a
It's fine. We'll send it out. Yeah, we'll send it out. So I know that we were running over and it's 9, but if we could put the link to the Padlet in the, I might be able to do that, the link to the Padlet into the chat. I really want us to be able to hear the different voices that were on the chat today, and I'm fine with you inviting friends to join in and just share your thoughts on hiring and retention. You know, what do we need to get this work done? So I'm going to, actually, Kev, if you could put that slide, slide 11, it has the QR code and they can just snap the QR code. And then I'll copy the link into the chat as well. And if you want to click on it, Kevin, can you click on it from where you are? And it's just basically 4 columns when you're able to go in. That poses the question, 1, how can I use my white privilege to dismantle systemic racism? How can I foster a sense of belonging in schools? How are you recruiting, hiring, retaining diverse talent? Talking about abolitionist learning and anti-racist learning. What are you doing individually and collectively to get that done? When you think about your self-awareness, what are the biases that you bring to the table? So actually, Kevin, you can put slide 10 up also. And if anyone just wants to take a picture of slide 10, these are just questions wonderings that I have and that you may have when we look at being self-aware, what privileges we have, how do we bring about a sense of belonging, how do we hire diverse staff, you know, do students see themselves in the lessons that you teach? And these are just probing questions to help you be authentic in your responses to the Padlet, because this information I think will be very helpful for all of us to be able to brainstorm, ideate, and actually strategize and develop plans that we can move forward. And every school will be in a different place, and every individual will be in a different place. But I think we just need to get started. You know, we have to be like Nike and just say, let's do it. You know, let's just get it done. You know, the dog agrees with me.
So Nadine, are we going to our breakout rooms, or you're on mute? You're muted, Nadine.
I'm sorry, Kevin. Can we do breakout rooms still, or because we're past the time, everyone has to individually do this?
I know. I mean, those that can stay on, you know, hop on. We're gonna do breakout rooms. We'll stay in for about 8 minutes with one.
Okay.
What we'll do is we'll put in the chat. We'll put the different topics that are on the slides, and select one that within your breakout room you all want to start to discuss. So we're going to type them right on over in here. So inside of, all right, so in the chat we've typed those different topics and questions. So in your breakout room, select one. We'll stay in for about 8 minutes and then pop back out. I'm going to pause the recording at this time. We don't record breakout rooms just so folks can have intimate conversations.
To go on with the rest of the program.
Okay, we'll just be wrapping up. And the late John Lewis, you know, what I loved about him is he talked about that good trouble, and he talked about being able to, being aware of the legacy you want to leave in this world. And I think we need to challenge ourselves to really think, what legacy do we want to leave? What legacy do we want to leave for our kids, our grandkids, our great-grandkids? Because we're in a place where we can definitely be a part of that change. In the next slide, and we'll copy the link into the chat. This, I just have to tell you, because this is another artist that I really like, Leroy Campbell. This is one of his original pieces, and I love it because of the different clip-ins on the walls and what they say. But that whole idea of reinforcing you are not a slave, because I remember growing up and that's all I really learned about myself in the curriculum. And I think the curriculum hasn't changed much. And so there are resources here, and I will share the link with you. Can you click on that, Kevin, just so that they can see that, they can see the resources, and I'll share it in the link. Or Kevin, can you share it when you share the video?
Oh, sorry, I'm on mute. So any of these resources we'll send out to everyone after, but I'll pop it into the chat also.
Okay, great. And it's just a list of resources. In particular, it was gathered together, and it's pulled from various sources on which I've listed. Resources in particular for white people and parents, so to deepen their understanding. I also did put something for if anyone wants to go on, I'd advocate for the fight for Breonna Taylor, I just think nothing has been done yet, and we really need to push that forward. But there are resources for parents, there are articles that you can read, there are videos you can watch, there are podcasts, and then there is a reading list of many, many books that give great insight, and some workbook for educators and resources regarding abolitionist learning and culturally responsive learning. There are also social media organizations you can follow. You can look to see if you're interested. Sometimes it's good to follow and just kind of learn about the change and the movement. So those are listed there, as well as other resources. I really appreciate everyone's candidness today. The group I was in, I wish we had more time, but I think everyone's in a different place in their school or within themselves, and I just want to continue to encourage you to do this good work. And I appreciate you taking the time, even though we went over, to have this uneasy but important dialogue. I really appreciate having you all on this session.
We appreciate you too, Nadine Richards, for taking the time and leading this conversation, and hopefully everyone can take something out of this session. I know I've learned a lot from you from yesterday, today, and I also want to thank everyone for taking the time, and special thanks to Kevin. Thank you so much, Kevin, for organizing this series. I know it takes a lot of time, and you are a champion in this fight, and many of us are so inspired by you. So I hope that everyone will leave here feeling like, comfortable having these uncomfortable conversations, and being true to ourselves, and just be vulnerable and take this conversation forwards within your family, your circle, your friends. And this gives me hope to see that we are talking about it and that people are joining these webinars. So, yay. Kevin, you want to say anything?
Yeah, and just quick so everyone knows, with Ty, we'll turn over to Meadow in a few, but we have a commitment to action again, a Padlet that's available. Again, we'll send this all out in terms of follow-up, but it doesn't stop here. Just so you all know, there's ongoing conversations up and coming, 6th of August, 12th of August, 18th of August onward. So be on the lookout for more of those. If you're not on our email list, we invite you to join our AIELOC email list to know when other discussions are being held. And again, it's more than discussing, like Nadine was saying. It's, again, taking that time to do our, what Dina Simmons calls our vigilant self-awareness and self-look at ourselves to see where we're at, where our teams are at, where our schools are at, where our households are at, and see what work we're committed to. And we have a free virtual online conference coming up in November. Again, space and place for this. And like Nadine said, we know sometimes an hour, and I know people said they wanted more time. We know that we have only so much time, and but again, it's allowing and having that place and space where we can all connect and connect to make change. So I'll turn over to Meadow, and then final words to Nadine, and then we'll keep it open for, I know some people say, can we keep it open for some time? We have a little bit of time. I do have another call, another session after this, but we'll leave it open as long as we can. All right.
And I have to apologize, guys. I have to leave. My son is still waiting for me. I have to pick him up. So thank you so much. And I hope to see you. Bye, guys.
Thank you so much, Darlene, for moderating. Thank you. All right, go ahead, Meadow.
Thanks, Kevin. And Nadine, thank you for your really bold and brilliant presentation today. I got so much out of it. And I think all of you did as well. All of those prompts were so compelling. And I know time is limited. So I just want to encourage you to take those prompts and start writing. And whatever you come up with at whatever stage it's at, send it my way. editor@tyonline.com. We want to hear your perspectives. We want to put them out there in the world. And I also want to encourage you to think, because, we're in a huge moment of transition here. And I think that we can, in addition to publishing your articles, amplifying your voices, I also want to invite you to help us understand what are the other ways in which TIE can help forward this conversation. So please, you know, whatever your thoughts are, like what is it that we need right now? What would really move things forward? We completely welcome your thoughts on that. So thanks for the opportunity to say a couple words. And I just, again, just this, you know, this fills me up, these webinars, Kevin. So thank you for everything you put into this.
Thank you, Madam. We posted that. And then again, like we said, any resources mentioned, you'll get the recording, the slides, as well as the resources that Nadine provided. Nadine, we'll turn over to you to close out, and then we'll have a little hangout session for folks who want to hang around.
Okay, I just want to thank everyone for making this space feel safe to even have this discussion. I wish we had more group time, and I'm honored to have had the opportunity to connect with you all. And please do stay in touch. I do think this is an ongoing dialogue, and I really, Dolene left, but she has been like awesome. We had a great, I think we were on for like 3 hours yesterday. And Kevin, you know, you and I just thank you again for doing this good work and pushing forward and really bringing people together. I think that's important. Sometimes we're not sure how to connect with one another. And that connection, that team that we build, that's how we're going to really be able to affect some positive change and really have an impact moving forward. And there's an urgency. I think I'll just leave you all with saying there is an urgency to do this work. I want us to see this as important as we would see child protection in any form of abuse. So thank you all for joining. Take care and have a good afternoon, evening, or morning from wherever you are.
Excellent. Thanks again, Nadine. Thanks again, everyone.